Next, from the press briefing room at the state capitol, Representative Jack Franks explains why he is urging Governor Quinn to fire the North Star Lottery Group, which manages the Illinois Lottery. This runs about 8 minutes.
And we're not doing anything about it, and the governor's saying, well, the only solution is to raise taxes. No, that isn't the only solution. The only solution is to do this right and increase revenue by $1 billion. I mean, I have a revenue enhancement that won't cost the taxpayers anything. The governor just has to do his job. That's all he has to do, but he refuses to do it. This is the $1 billion we could talk about. It's at least $200 million this year alone. So I think that's where you start. And then you hold everybody accountable, but there's no accountability with this administration. The governor entered into this contract. It's a bad contract. They have not been performing this contract. He has a moral obligation to fix it. He ought to terminate it right now, and he can. Under the terms of the contract, he can, and he must. So that's what I'm asking him to do now. If he doesn't, he's negligent. And he loses, I think, credibility when he says to the people, our only chance, our only solution is to raise taxes. That just isn't true, Governor. The first thing you ought to be doing is fixing your own problems and cleaning your own house. And when you do that, that'll clean up a lot of the other problems. You know, we can talk about hiring too, but that's another issue.
So the privatization was done to increase revenue, and it just hasn't happened.
It's kind of a little bit. We have gone up, but everybody's gone up. I mean, the majority of the states have gone up, but we're out of a recession now. Except in Illinois, we're still doing poorly when it comes to job creation. But most of the other states have gone up, and they don't have private managers. And here we are paying them $100 million to go down. It's ludicrous. It's tantamount to lunacy. There's no reason to be doing this.
Could I ask where that $1 billion you came up?
Well, we talk about, like right now, they're supposed to do about $980 million in sales, and they're about $778. So right there, we've lost a couple $100 million right there. But what they've done is, you saw one of the numbers I thought was very telling. They used to have, I think, around 40 pulls a week on their games, and now they've gone to 136. They've increased it by over 200%, yet their revenue hasn't increased, which tells me that they keep preying on the same people and going to the same folks to have them buy the tickets, instead of expanding the universe and getting more people involved. I mean, their rollout on the online stuff was embarrassing. And they said they were going to make net income of $34 million on their online, and they didn't even do sales of $34 million. So they've made mistake after mistake after mistake. They're marketing to the same group instead of expanding it. It's horrible mismanagement. And on a per capita basis, states like Georgia and Massachusetts do 2.5 times what we do. So if we extrapolate those numbers and did as well as Georgia or Massachusetts, we'd be getting about $1 billion extra a year. That's how I come up with that number, if that makes sense. Okay. Anybody else?
It seems like Dems are looking to run with Quinn's recommended budget. I was wondering if we could get some of your thoughts on that.
I think it's illegal. I think under the Constitution of the state of Illinois, we have an obligation to have a balanced budget. Our revenue estimates are approximately $4 billion less than the governor's recommended budget. Therefore, we could not have a balanced budget, and it would be violative of the Illinois Constitution, number one. Number two, we also passed a law a few years ago called Budgeting for Results. In that bill, and the governor's interesting, he didn't sign that bill until 1 hour after he gave his budget address a few years ago, because he knew he couldn't give the budget address if he would have signed this bill an hour before. Because the bill said, in your budget, you can only give and you can only base it on anticipated revenues. Our anticipated revenues, we passed that bill in the House. It was a resolution that Representative Bradley and I carried, along with Representative Harris and Pritchard. It passed unanimously, and it was $4 billion less. There's no way the governor can propose a budget not based on anticipated revenues. So I think not only does it violate the Constitution, it also violates the budgeting for results legislation that we passed just a few years ago that this governor signed. I think it tramples on the taxpayers. I don't think it should be voted on. I just think it's improper. I'm going to make a parliamentary inquiry on that.
Jack, is there a penalty if we cancel the contract?
There's 6 different ways to cancel the contract. So, listen, North Star's been in litigation since day one. As I said before, they're better at litigation than actually selling lottery tickets. So I presume there's going to be some fighting about it, but I don't think we can afford to keep this anymore. It would be my position that we don't owe them anything because they've underperformed every year. And one of the provisions is to cancel for convenience. And since they're going to have to owe us millions and millions of dollars in penalty payments, I don't think that they have much leg to stand on.
And I'm sorry if you said this already, when does their contract run out?
Well, it's a long contract. It could go for 10 years, but for the 3 years that we've had it so far, they've never met their numbers, not even close. And over the first 3 years, the taxpayers of Illinois have lost over $445 million in lost profits. And that was bottom line, $445 million.
Sorry,
Yeah, it's okay.
Who would you propose to take over for North Star? Would you go back to the old model or?
I'd leave that to the experts. I was never a fan of a private management agreement because it hasn't really been tested before. We were one of the first ones, and the other states that have done it haven't been very happy. What I would propose is that we bring it in-house and hire the best people in-house and have them run it, because I think that's the way to do it. I hate to leave any of the profits to a private organization instead of having all the profits go to the citizens, because this is a public asset, and it's just, we're not getting the return that we should. If we're going to have this, we ought to maximize the return, and instead, we're going backwards. We're leaving hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars on the table, and there's no excuse for it.
Have you been in talks with the governor?
Yeah, I've let them know, of his staff, a number of times of my displeasure. They've refused to act, so that's why today I've figured I had to go public with it and call him out publicly to do this, since he's publicly asking for a tax increase. I'd like him to explain why he's asking for a tax increase when he refuses to make the hard decisions that need to be made to increase revenue without asking the people for a tax increase. Got it? Anything else? I appreciate you being here. If you need anything, let me know.
The Illinois Channel's coverage of the state legislature is underwritten by the Illinois Trial Lawyers Association.